There was a scream, a real, blood-curdling one, the kind that makes your coffee freeze halfway to your lips, followed by a splash. And then, just like that, absolute silence. Well, almost, except for the frogs croaking as Karen's $12,000 camel-wrapped ATV slipped beneath the lily pads of my backyard pond. 1 second, she was airborne, blonde hair flying behind her like some deranged shampoo commercial. The next, she was swallowed up by 2 feet of water and, honestly, about 40 years' worth of bad decisions. And I just stood there, coffee in hand, blinking because, well, you can't make up that kind of neighborhood entertainment. I'll never forget how she looked when she resurfaced. Hair plastered to her face with pond scum, eyes blazing with betrayal, as if I had personally catapulted her into that mess. She screamed, "You're going to pay for this," while flinging a wad of algae at the sky like she was invoking some kind of revenge spell. And, standing there on my porch, wearing my old flannel, I just thought, well, guess I'll be in court by Tuesday. See, Karen moved into our quiet little patch of nowhere about 6 months before that epic flight. Before she arrived, this place was peaceful. Birds, wind through the trees, that's about it. But after she landed, the sound of tranquility was replaced by the constant roar of her overpowered, way too shiny ATV. She wasn't just loud, she was entitled. Like, Olympic-level entitled. The kind of person who believes property lines are just a suggestion and private means open to negotiation if you ask with enough attitude. Our yards met at this little strip of woods, 30 yards of trees and a footpath, nothing fancy, just a trail I'd clear to walk my dog and water the koi pond I'd built with my own 2 hands. She saw it once, said cute trail, and the next thing I knew, she was using it as her personal motocross circuit. Every time I tried to talk to her, it was sarcasm, or if she was feeling especially generous, outright laughter. The last straw came when I put up wooden signs, private property, keep off trail. She ripped one down, snapped it over her knee, and left it on my porch like a deranged calling card. And the HOA? Yeah, don't get me started. Karen's cousin Mitch had just gotten himself voted in as vice president, and suddenly, none of my complaints made it past the suggestion box. So, I did the only thing that felt halfway sane. I reinforced my markers, painted the signs with reflective paint, installed a couple of solar lights and a trail cam. Not because I expected a circus, but I wanted a record, just in case. 15 years in this house, and I wasn't about to let it turn into Karen's personal racetrack. Then came that Saturday. It started off normal enough. Sunshine, bird song, a perfect cup of coffee on the porch. But then, there it was, that familiar whine of Karen's ATV. Except this time, she had an audience, a whole gaggle of yoga friends clustered on our property line, all giggles and cell phones. Karen was kitted out in a pink athletic suit, sunglasses the size of dinner plates. She revved the engine like she was about to go for gold at the X Games. At first, I figured, well, here comes the usual circus. Ignore it, drink your coffee, count down minutes. But then she pointed straight at my trail. Watch this, ladies. Redneck rally time. My stomach dropped. I stood up, coffee forgotten. She gunned it. The ATV kicked up gravel and shot across the trail like a missile, totally ignoring my neon signs. She hit the irrigation trench I'd dug the week before, a little rut, 2 feet deep. Nothing you'd notice if you were walking, but if you're barreling along at full throttle, it's basically a ramp from a cartoon. The ATV launched. For 3 glorious, slow-motion seconds, Karen was flying. The machine arced through the air, then crashed straight into the pond with a splash. So, Huge my koi are probably still holding support group meetings. For a second, time just stopped. Even the frogs looked stunned. And then Karen popped up, coughing, flailing, hair tangled in pondweed. Her friend stood there, phones frozen, one of them finally remembering to film. Karen dragged herself to the bank, soaked to the skin, sunglasses gone, her phone, her beloved bubblegum pink, chest-holstered phone, now somewhere in the murky deep with the fish. Did she apologize? Of course not. She pointed a shaky, slime-covered finger at me and shouted, "You set me up." This was a trap, as if I'd dug that trench just to launch her into the water, Home Alone style. She told her friends to call the police. I just went inside, grabbed a towel for myself because I was about to lose it laughing, and waited for the authorities. The sheriff arrived, looking like he'd drawn the short straw for Karen duty. By then, she developed a limp, a backache, and minor memory loss due to pond trauma. She was sitting on my lawn like a soggy mermaid, muttering about lawsuits and demanding an ambulance. The deputy, who knows me by name, small town perks, just sighed and asked, "You got footage?" I handed over the SD card from the trail cam. 2 hours later, her poor ATV was fished out by a tow truck, green and smelly and very, very sad. Karen limped after it like a war widow, snapping pictures of my yard with her backup phone. "I'm calling my lawyer," she shrieked through the trees. "Yeah, I thought, of course you are." A week later, a fat envelope landed in my mailbox. Karen was suing me for damages to her ATV, for emotional trauma, for reckless landscaping, even for ecosystem contamination from hazardous koi waste. I stared at the papers, then looked out at my pond, where my koi were doing lazy laps, blissfully unaware. I just shook my head. But then I saw her lawyer was her ex-husband Darren, a guy with a bad comb-over and a reputation for handing out business cards at funerals. Local legend says he once lost a custody battle for his own dog. But hey, for Karen, he was apparently good enough. The paperwork was a masterpiece. Malicious environmental trap, hostile landscaping behavior, intent to harm. It sounded less like a lawsuit and more like Shakespeare tried landscaping. But I knew better than to laugh it off. Karen didn't need to be right. She just needed to be loud and relentless. I called Nina my secret weapon. Nina is everything Darren isn't. Sharp, unflappable, with a memory like a steel trap and a personal grudge against Karen dating back to a noise ordinance fight years ago. When I explained the whole mess, she nearly skipped down the courthouse steps to take my case. When we met in her office, she read the complaint in silence, then massaged her temples like she'd just binge-watched 3 seasons of reality TV. "She's suing you," she said, "because she drove her ATV into a pond, ignoring every sign. She wants you to pay for her custom paint job's emotional loss, and claims koi waste endangered her boots." I try not to smile. Nina just shook her head. "We're going to destroy them." Meanwhile, Karen took her victim routine to social media. Suddenly, she was posting selfies in a neck brace, an arm sling, and once with crutches, even though her injury was just a sprained ankle. Her posts? All about betrayal, environmental sabotage, and how I was some bitter recluse out to ruin her freedom. She gave the pond dive an official name, The Incident, and started tagging Justice for Karen and pond trauma on everything. The internet, thank God, wasn't having it. Someone dubbed her Pond Karen and edited her airborne moment to banjo music. That went viral in a way only neighborhood drama can. But Karen wasn't done. She was working the HOA angle. Mitch, her cousin, suddenly sent me a violation notice for improper water containment and, my favorite, unauthorized topographical manipulation. He tried to fine me $5,000 and demanded I fill in the pond for safety. What they didn't count on was the paperwork. Nina and I went down to the county records office and pulled out every permit, every inspection. Turns out, my pond was registered for agricultural use before the subdivision was even built. Hell, the fire department had even marked it as a backup water source. Not only was my pond legal, but tearing it down could have gotten them into even hotter water. Of course, that didn't stop Darren from sending daily emails demanding a detailed fish inventory. Nina replied once, "No, your client is not entitled to count the koi," and never responded again. The HOA called an emergency vote to force me into compliance, but enough neighbors showed up in protest to shut it down. Karen stormed out, full costume, brace, crutches, the works, yelling that we were enabling a terrorist landscaper. That's when the twist hit. My neighbor Carla, quiet, keeps to herself, loves birds, had been live-streaming her bird feeder cam for years. Turns out, it also caught the entire ATV crash in glorious 4K from a perfect side angle. It showed Karen revving up, her friends egging her on, Karen shouting, "Airborne, baby!" and then splat. You could even hear her say, "If I crash, I'm totally suing. Mitch said they can't touch me. We had the nuclear option. When the court date came, Karen arrived in full drama. Brace, sunglasses, massive folder, Darren trailing behind her, looking like he wished he'd stayed in bed. The judge? No patience for nonsense. Darren tried to make my pawn sound like a Bond villain's lair. The judge looked like she was suppressing a laugh. Nina calmly explained the pawn's history, the signs, the legal permits, Karen's trespasses, and then Carla's 4K footage. When the airborne baby line played, the entire courtroom went dead silent. Even Karen looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. When Carla testified, deadpan, explaining how Karen had once borrowed her kayak and filled it with grass clippings to make a natural spa. Even the bailiff cracked up. When Karen took the stand, it was a disaster. She claimed my koi glared at her, that the warning signs were in a foreign language, and that my lawn gnome looked aggressive. Nina pulled out a photo of Karen flipping off one of the signs the day before the crash. The final blow? A text from Karen. If I crash, I'll sue. My cousin says they can't touch me. The judge called a recess. When she returned, she dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice. She referred Karen for perjury and the HOA for review. Karen lost her case, her cousin's power, and, if we're being honest, whatever was left of her dignity. She stormed out, Darren in tow, sunglasses askew. Of course, Karen tried to keep swinging, filed a police report accusing me of running an illegal koi trafficking ring. The cops laughed. The county attorney started looking into malicious litigation. Rumor has it, she left town for a while to let things cool off. The neighborhood threw a block party. Someone made cupcakes, Pond, 1, Karen, 0 written in blue frosting. But here's the thing, the lesson that snuck up on me, somewhere between the drama and the memes. People like Karen, they think they can rewrite reality, bend everyone to their will, even the law. And for a while, it can feel like maybe they can. But in the end, truth has this stubborn way of bobbing back up, like a koi surfacing for food. All it takes is a few neighbors who've had enough, a trail cam, and a little humor to keep your sanity. So, justice was served, karmic and legal. I rebuilt the pond, bigger and better, added a solar fountain, put up a little ceramic figurine of an airborne ATV at the water's edge, captioned flight risk. The neighborhood kids reenacted the jump at the block party, cardboard ATV and all. Carla gave me a framed still from her video with airborne baby in a speech bubble. I hung it in my living room, a trophy in the weirdest war I never wanted to fight. A year later, a documentary filmmaker knocked on my door. He wanted to tell the story, community justice, absurd lawsuits, and yes, the power of koi memes. The film blew up. The comments section was a riot. Debates about boundaries, justice, and whether Karen deserved a parachute. And, in a final twist, Karen herself emailed me after seeing the documentary. No threats, just a line. You could have made me look worse. You didn't. Thank you. Maybe she learned something. Maybe not. But I had my pond, my peace, and my dignity back. So, let me ask you, where do you draw the line between standing your ground and just letting things go? Is it worth fighting when someone tries to bulldoze your boundaries? Have you ever faced a Karen of your own? Tell me your story. Let's see where justice lands. And hey, next time you see a sign that says private property, remember, it's not just a suggestion. It's a boundary. And sometimes it comes with a splash.